elected as the leader of the Conservative.
The United Kingdom welcomed new leadership this week. Conservative Liz Truss ascended to the seat of Prime Minister following a bruising race with former Chancellor Rishi Sunak. And in the streets of the capital of a nation where political divisions run deep, the reaction was understandably mixed.
I support Liz Truss, and I think that she's a great Prime Minister for our country. Obviously, how hopeful I am is I'm very hopeful that she would deliver.
I think that the new Prime Minister will, in many ways, disappoint the country. I don't think she's going to be the right fit for the job.
The former foreign minister takes over the reins of a country in the middle of its worst cost of living crisis in decades. To help consumers, the Truss government is capping household energy bills at $2,900 a year for the next 2 years. According to Downing Street estimates, that would translate to savings of almost $1,200 per family. The government's also providing close to $47 billion in aid to energy companies so they can better cope with volatile markets. Early estimates show the plan will cost the government around $174 billion. To pay for the package, lawmakers have called for a special tax on oil and gas giants that have posted record profits. But the new PM says that is off the table.
The reality is that this country will not be able to tax its way to growth. The way we will grow our economy is by attracting investment, keeping taxes low, delivering the reforms to build projects quicker. That is the way that we will create jobs and opportunities across our country.
Members of the opposition are skeptical. They say the government plan may help in the short term, but will have consequences for years to come.
The money's got to come from somewhere. And she knows that every single pound in excess profits she chooses not to tax is an extra pound on borrowing that working people will be forced to pay back for decades to come. More borrowing than is needed. That's the true cost of her choice to protect oil and gas profits.
Truss believes the plan will help slash inflation in half. That, in turn, will boost economic activity and tax revenues, providing the resources to pay for the extra expense. But if it fails, it's Truss, the country's third prime minister since 2019, who may end up paying the price. Paolo Montecillo, TRT World.
Well, let's get some analysis now with economist Vicky Pryce, who's a board member at the Centre for Economics and Business Research in London. And joining us from Istanbul is Taha Arvas, an economist and adjunct professor of finance at Boğaziçi University. A big welcome to you both. Vicky, if I could begin with you. We know the UK is currently in mourning after the death of Queen Elizabeth II, but after a certain amount of time, the public discussion will return to the cost of living crisis. Before the monarch's death, Liz Truss had announced a rather controversial plan to effectively cap energy bills at an average of about $2,900 for the next 2 years. What do you make of that plan? Will it work?
Well, it's interesting that plan came out on the same day, of course, as the sad death of Queen Elizabeth. That, of course, has meant that the publicity, if you like, and the coverage of what it all means for the country, what it means for public finances, has not yet started in a serious way. But I think Liz Truss, the new Prime Minister, had absolutely no choice but to tackle the energy crisis first. I think she knew that. We all knew that. What is quite surprising is the scale of the support that she's prepared to give and the fact that she's prepared to borrow quite a lot for it, or rather the taxpayer, of course, is going to pay. But there is no doubt that that type of increases that we had seen already, now remember we had a 54% increase back in April in electricity bills for households, and we were about to have another 80% in October. That increase that we've seen so far is very substantial, has already cut living standards quite significantly. And all that is happening now is just preventing these things from worsening much more, even though there will still be an increase in what the average household pays. So it had to be tackled. Now, obviously, there must be some hope that wholesale gas prices are going to start coming down, that this support perhaps may not be needed for the 2 years that has been announced. But I think it is quite a brave move, frankly, and one probably which is welcomed by people looking at it.
And I want to come to the issue of funding a little later, but Taha, as a part of this plan, Liz Truss is also keen to boost the UK's energy producing capabilities. It wants to issue more oil and gas exploration licences. It also wants to lift a controversial ban on fracking as well, and it also wants to boost nuclear and renewable energy sources. But these are more longer term solutions, aren't they? Because it'll take a while before any of that comes online.
Absolutely. I think the goal here was to get a quick win, if you will, and to say to the public, listen, I have a plan to move us forward. We're going to lower energy costs. It's great in that it's a plan, but new nuclear plants, getting new fracking licenses and getting fracking underway, or drilling for new oil, off the northern part of UK. These are all great ideas if you believe in the continued use of fossil fuels, but they will take many years. So these aren't things that will decrease the price of oil and gas this winter, and that's what we're looking at, really. I mean, although the UK doesn't use Russian natural gas and oil as much as other parts of Europe, like Germany, it's affected by them because their supply will be moving towards continental Europe and driving up their prices. So in short, the answer is yes. It's lip service. It's a political move. Great, but it's not going to do anything this winter. And who knows? It may not do anything during the tenure of Liz Truss, because obviously the last few prime ministers haven't lasted longer. So she may be gone by the time we see any effect these moves might have.
Okay, and Vicky, in our first segment, we looked at the European Commission's proposal to mandate the use of energy throughout the bloc, but Liz Truss has stopped short of urging households and businesses to basically cut their use of electricity. Is that something she should have done?
I think there's still more to come, frankly. I mean, all we had so far was this particular measure. There is also guidance coming from the business department, which looks after energy as well. There have been hints that maybe public buildings and offices are going to be encouraged not to keep the lights on during the night, and energy saving measures, I'm sure, are going to be thought about. Now, the extent to which they can be mandated, that's a different issue. But I think there is a general belief that the cost to businesses in particular of seriously increasing the price of energy, which is what quite a lot of international institutions are suggesting, saying that that is the way you're going to be perhaps becoming more efficient in energy use, because high price would mean you do something slightly different in terms of your production process. Actually, what it would have meant here in the UK, because of the way our electricity market works, those increases would have been so great that in reality a lot of businesses would probably not be able to survive and would have to get, stop operating, with an increase in unemployment. So the focus for the moment is, let's stop that. So it isn't just households, it's also businesses that are receiving the support, as you rightly indicated in your bulletin. And that is only for 6 months for the moment, but might be extended, whereas for 2 years for individual households. But I think this is going to be something that will be negotiated in terms of businesses talking to the government and seeing what it is that can be done on their side as well to improve energy efficiency. Individual households are going to do that anyway, because prices have gone up quite significantly already, irrespective of the fact that further increases have been capped.
And Taha, Vicky earlier mentioned the issue of funding. Liz Truss wants to borrow much of the money involved in this plan to freeze energy bills. It's estimated at about $174 billion. The Labor opposition, though, thinks that energy companies should be footing the bill for much of it. It says that these companies have been profiting massively from soaring energy prices, and therefore a so-called windfall tax should be imposed on them. Is that a reasonable request? Should they be helping out?
I'm sure that's the major political question. I mean, if you're on the left, like Keir Starmer, the head of the opposition, the head of Labour, you think that's a good idea. If you're, if your campaigns are funded by big oil and big gas, et cetera, then you may think the opposite. But the reality is these energy companies have made a killing during this latest spike in energy prices. Not only has the price the input prices have not increased as much as their prices have, as their wholesale prices have. We can see that just from public companies and how huge their profits have become. So is she incorrect in saying, excuse me, is he incorrect in saying that they should help foot the bill? Of course not. I think they should help foot the bill. Otherwise, it's just a huge transfer of wealth from the poor to the rich in the UK, because they're the ones that are footing the bill for this cap, and it's just financing these companies, and that's a shame, really.
And Vicky, before this energy crisis, the UK was seen as a world leader in terms of its efforts to cut carbon emissions and tackle the climate crisis. But of course, these events have happened, and it sounds like really the climate crisis is taking a bit of a back seat, with this government looking to further exploit fossil fuels. I mean, is that fair to say, that really the climate crisis is now of a lower priority for the UK government?
When you look at some of the people in the cabinet, you might argue that that is indeed the case. But there is no doubt in my mind that renewables are going to be the solution for the future. And I don't think anyone who's looking at energy policy here will think differently. But there is also the belief that fossil fuels and whether it's oil and gas, or of course, look at Germany using more coal possibly in the short term, but also nuclear and others are going to be part of the mix. And we also know that even by the time we reach net zero, some 20% of what we will be using globally is going to be basically based on oil and gas. So we do have an issue, of course, of balancing the need for self-sufficiency with climate change issues, which are not going to go away. So I don't think it's a departure. You could say that it's more a practical realization of what needs to happen to wean ourselves and Europe, of course, off Russian gas. And I think what will be happening in terms of the North Sea, possibly fracking, which is going to, as we heard before, take quite some time to have an impact. But it is, if you like, assisting the sort of balance that is required, will be required in the future if we want more self-sufficiency and also lower costs.
Okay, and we will have to leave it there. Vicky Pryce, Taha Arvas, a pleasure to have you both on the program. Thank you.